Right now, inside your body, there's this incredibly high-stakes balancing act happening every single second. And if it goes wrong, well, it's a life-or-death situation. Today, we're going to break down the absolutely critical science of your body's acid-base balance.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a question for you. I want you to forget your blood pressure, your heart rate, even your cholesterol for just a second. What do you think is the single most important number that your body fights tooth and nail to keep exactly right?
The answer? It's 7.4. That's it. It's not a range, it's not some complex formula, it's just one number. And honestly, it has the most profound implications for your survival.
So that number, 7.4, it represents the perfect pH for your blood, this incredibly delicate sweet spot right between acidic and alkaline. If that number shifts by just a few tenths of a point, it's not just a small problem, it signals a full-blown, life-threatening emergency. So how on earth does our body pull this off?
All right, let's get into it. First up, the body's perfect balance. We're going to explore the incredible systems that work around the clock to maintain this critical equilibrium. So what even is pH? Well, it's just a scale, right? It measures how acidic or alkaline something is. And for our blood, that 7.4 isn't some random number. It is the perfect neutral environment where trillions of cells and countless chemical reactions can all happen just right. It's literally the foundation for everything. A really good way to think about all this is to imagine your body as this massive, finely tuned chemical factory. Every single process, every reaction, it all depends on the factory's internal environment being perfectly stable. And that stability, it's all about holding on to that perfect 7.4 pH.
And in this factory, you've got two key departments in charge of keeping everything stable. First, you've got the lungs. Think of them as the ventilation system, constantly pumping out acidic carbon dioxide. Then you have the kidneys. They're the super sophisticated waste processing plant, managing all the other acids and bases to keep things perfectly in check.
So everything's running smoothly, but what happens when it's not? What if one of those departments starts to fail? Let's take a look at what happens when the factory's metabolism goes wrong. Well, that's when you get something called metabolic acidosis. In our factory analogy, this is when the waste processing plant, the kidneys, or maybe another metabolic process just fails. What happens? You get a dangerous buildup of acidic waste in the bloodstream, and that pulls the pH down deep into the danger zone.
Now, what kind of things can cause this? Well, there are a few major culprits. One big one is diabetic ketoacidosis, where the body starts producing these acidic things called ketones. Another is severe kidney failure, obviously because the kidneys just can't get rid of the acid. And then there's lactic acidosis, which can happen when someone is critically ill and their tissues just aren't getting enough oxygen.
And believe it or not, the system can swing in the complete opposite direction. That's what we call metabolic alkalosis. A classic example of this is when someone loses way too much stomach acid, maybe from severe vomiting. That actually pushes the body's pH too high, making it too alkaline.
All right, so that's the whole waste processing side of things. But what if the problem isn't there at all? What if it's the ventilation system?
And this brings us to respiratory acidosis. Remember how we said the lungs are all about venting out that acidic CO2? Well, if that ventilation system fails for some reason and you just can't breathe out enough CO2, that acid builds up in your blood. And, you guessed it, your pH plummets.
So, what could stop that ventilation from working right? Well, it could be something blocking the airway, like during a really severe asthma attack or from the lung disease COPD. It can also happen if the brain's control center for breathing gets suppressed, like from an opioid overdose. Or the problem could be with the breathing muscles themselves. Maybe they've been weakened by a neuromuscular disease.
And the flip side of this? It's actually something a lot of us have probably felt. Have you ever gotten dizzy or lightheaded from hyperventilating when you're anxious? That's respiratory alkalosis. You're breathing so fast that you're literally blowing off too much of that acidic CO2, and it causes your blood pH to shoot up.
So, okay, things can go wrong in a couple of big ways. But here's the amazing part. The body is incredibly resilient. It has a plan. Let's look at how it fights back to restore that perfect balance.
And this is maybe the most important thing to get. These factory departments, they don't work alone. They are an amazing team. When the metabolic system fails, the respiratory system kicks into overdrive to pick up the slack, and it works the other way around too. This incredible backup process is called compensation.
So let's play this out. Imagine the metabolic system fails. An acid starts to build up. Tiny little sensors in your body, they're called chemoreceptors, they detect this shift instantly. They send a red alert straight to your brainstem, which shouts one simple command: breathe faster. This rapid breathing just blows off tons of extra CO2, and that helps pull the pH back towards safety. It is an amazing, super fast response.
This whole compensation thing is brilliant, right? But it's really just a temporary patch. So how do doctors, acting as our factory's engineers, figure out where the real problem started? How do they find the source?
Well, they've got this kind of diagnostic toolkit that has three main parts. First up is the patient's story. What's been going on? Second, they do a really thorough physical exam, looking for clues. And finally, there's a critical blood test called an arterial blood gas, or ABG, which gives them a direct snapshot of the blood's pH and gas levels to pinpoint exactly where the problem is.
And this really sums up that whole teamwork idea perfectly. Your lungs can start to fix the problem in just minutes by changing how you breathe. But your kidneys, our powerful metabolic workhorses, they're much slower. It can take them hours or even days to fully kick in. It's this constant dynamic team effort that's always fighting to maintain that perfect 7.4.
And you know, this really brings us to the biggest takeaway from all of this. In a hospital, you never just treat the pH. The goal isn't just to correct a number on a lab report. The real goal, the only goal, is to find and fix the underlying problem in whichever department is failing. So that might mean giving insulin for ketoacidosis or helping a patient with lung disease to breathe better. You have to fix the cause, not just the number.
You know, this whole balancing act is an ancient biological system that's kept us alive for thousands and thousands of years. But it does make you wonder, as our world changes with our modern diets, our stress levels, our environment, how might our modern lifestyle be putting new, unseen pressures on this incredibly delicate internal equilibrium?